Hello and welcome to Beyond the Walls. I am Ernie C. Campbell, the pastor of Epworth UMC here in Columbus, Georgia. This is the podcast number 2 podcast of our launch of this dynamic opportunity to come together to talk about societal justice, physiological, psychological, and other issues undergirded with a biblical context to it. I have with me today my guest, Margaret McCall. Welcome to you, Margaret. And so let me tell you a little bit about Margaret. I mean, she's this dynamic woman in her own right. So let me tell you who she is professionally. She is a licensed professional counselor who specializes in the treatment of obsessive compulsive and body dysmorphic disorder. She is on a mission to educate others on these misunderstood disorders. Thank you so much. She is a regular guest lecturer at local universities, presents at national conferences, and provides consultation to therapists in the U.S. and worldwide. Margaret is the founder of the Columbus OCD Clinic, and she treats clients in Georgia and Florida. Wow. Thank you again for being here with us. And I am so excited to delve into what is body dysmorphic disorder. So that's our main topic for today. We will have you back to talk about OCD. And so, but just want to hear you share anything you want to share before we get to the topic. Again, welcome to you.
Thank you. Well, first, I want to say thank you for inviting me because this is a really important topic. Most people don't understand body dysmorphic disorder, and people who have it don't realize they have it. So I think that exposing this, I mean, part of my mission is to help people understand these disorders so that they can get proper care because treatment is effective and can be available. But if you don't know you're suffering from it, you won't reach out for treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, what does it look like for someone to be diagnosed? Does someone come to you and say, hey, I think I'm suffering with something? And what is the meaning of body dysmorphic disorder?
So most people with body dysmorphic disorder are experiencing depression.
Okay.
78% of people with body dysmorphic disorder could be diagnosed with major depressive disorder or social phobia, which is a fear of going out in public places and being judged negatively. That's what they largely would come to treatment for. When it comes to the actual, let me tell you what body dysmorphic disorder is, because it's basically a preoccupation with a perceived flaw that is imperceptible to other people. So it's either invisible, meaning it's an imaginary flaw, or it's so minimal that other people wouldn't be able to notice it from a close distance. You know, they have to get really close to notice it, right?
Okay.
So, but the person who has it sees it. I mean, they really do see it. And we can talk a little bit more about why they see it.
Okay.
But so if I have a flaw, I'm not coming to a therapist. You can't do anything for me, right? You're not a dermatologist. You're not a cosmetic surgeon.
You can't fix my skin
That's
issues.
right.
Okay.
Which skin is one of the most common concerns for somebody with BDD. You go into a dermatologist, but I'll come to you for depression because that is, I mean, if I'm living with this flaw, I'm going to feel very hopeless and helpless and often I've already been to dermatologists and cosmetic surgeons who are telling me that there's nothing wrong, but I still see it. So that's what it will look like. And the problem is, and one of the reasons I'm glad you're having me on, is that even therapists don't understand it. You know, really. And I was
more about that.
Yeah, I was one of those therapists, right? So we go to graduate school, we take one course in psychopathology, so we learn all the disorders in the DSM, right? But it's a cursory knowledge, right? And the focus is more on the big things like anxiety and depression. But really, unless you take a deep dive, it's hard to understand BDD. And most people don't screen for it either. So if a person comes in with BDD, but they're presenting a major depressive disorder, they're not bringing up these body-focused concerns to a therapist. They're just talking about their depression. And if the therapist doesn't ask, the client won't tell for several reasons. So, and one of the there's several reasons why the person in the client's chair won't tell. One is, like I said before, what can you do about my body flaw, right? You know, what's the point of talking about it here?
Anxiety,
exactly, just
all
to
of
treat
that.
the depression, how I'm feeling. And two, is there's a lot of shame associated with it, because if I'm spending all of this time preoccupied with my appearance, it feels like vanity, but it's not vanity. It's the opposite of vanity. It's absolutely not vanity, and that's what a lot of therapists think, that it's vanity. And three, if I have what I see as an observable flaw in my appearance, if I point it out to you, then you're going to notice it and be staring at it. That's right.
Okay,
I don't want to bring
I
attention to
see.
this flaw,
Very good. Okay.
right? Or I've done it so much that people have just said it's not there. Why would it bother, right? You're just going to be like the other people. So the reason why it doesn't get diagnosed is, one, I like the therapist's knowledge and understanding. And like I said, I was one of those therapists before I began to specialize for OCD and BDD. The lack of the patient actually believing the flaw and not realizing that it's a mental health disorder, and they're there to know it.
So BDD is a mental health disorder.
Yes.
Okay.
Body dysmorphia disorder. It falls under, so the DSM-3 is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that therapists and psychiatrists use to diagnose certain disorders. It's big manual like our Bible, so to speak, in our area. And when we have a list of criteria for each disorder, you have to meet that criteria to get that diagnosis, and for insurance payment, for other things. So a person with BDD is going to spend at least an hour a day preoccupied with, again, a perceived flaw. Now, if a client says, my nose is crooked and it's really large and it doesn't fit my face, and I'm looking at them and their nose is crooked and it's really large and doesn't fit their face, that's not BDD. They have a large nose, right?
Now, let me ask you, would you affirm that? Validate that with the person? If the person said that to you, how would you respond to that, even though you're sitting there saying it?
So typically, if a person that would be something different. Like they have, it could be somebody with a disability or whatever that is overly preoccupied with their disability. So I would use a different approach to treat that, because that is learning to accept this disability, learning to accept that, your nose is a little bit bigger than other people's, but that's a lot different than a person that comes in and says they have this large crooked nose, and I'm looking at a normal nose. And so what I say to my clients is, I have to be very gentle, because people are embarrassed, and there's a lot of shame, and there's a lot of depression, and they've already experienced so much invalidation for their beliefs. Because when they look in the mirror, this is what they see. And so what I say is, I just want you to know, I don't see what you're seeing, and I know that that's not going to make a difference in your belief about it. And I also know that you are now telling yourself that I'm a therapist, and of course I'm going to be kind. And of course I'm not going to tell you if I see this thing about you. But that's the least kind thing I have to do. Because if I see that you have this flaw, my job is to help you to deal with it.
Okay, so if the flaw is there, the nose is crooked, it is kind of bigger than what normally is, you would gently affirm the person in that. And then what would be a next step to help the person, because apparently it is bothering the person. So what would be a next step?
So that would be body dysmorphia. It's not a disorder. It could be a disorder like an anxiety disorder. It could lead to depression. It could lead to other things. But there's no disorder called body dysmorphia. So there's body dysmorphic disorder. Remember the difference. Perceived flaw, imagined flaw, or one so minimal, versus a body dysmorphia, where there's something about me that's actually there that I don't like. Right? And so there's some approaches and I'm not typically treating that person because I specialize in OCD and BDD, but if I were treating that person, I would use cognitive behavioral therapy. They probably have some distorted thinking around this, maybe overestimation of threat, or catastrophication, or mind reading, what other people are thinking about me, and we try to untangle those distorted thinking. There's also acceptance and commitment therapy, where we, it's basically where you accept things as they are, and you move on and lead a values-based life. So looking at how you would lead, what are the values, what are the other things? You're over-focusing on this one body flaw, but there's so many things about you that is bigger than the status quo. So it's really about perspective, right? And so that's how I would work with somebody with body dysmorphia. And there's other approaches, I'm sure, but that would be my approach, the CBT and the ACT approach. Now, when it comes to body dysmorphic disorder, these aren't real thoughts, right? And so treatment, and when we can get into treatment, that there also some cognitive, well, everything's going to fall under cognitive behavioral therapy, even you know what that is. So cognitive behavioral therapy is where we look at cognition. So the belief is you might be feeling really upset about something, but that upset comes from a thought, right? So you and I, within the thought comes from the event. So something happens, I walk in here and you look at me kind of funny, and I'm thinking, oh, she doesn't like something about me, right? And then I start feeling anxious and worried and maybe insecure, and then I might really not behave very well, like I might withdraw from the situation, right? Because now I think you're judging me about something. Whereas somebody else might walk in here and you look at them kind of off and they might think, oh, she must be having a bad morning. Right? And now I might go get you a cup of coffee and try to cheer you up. Right? So the same event, we had two different thoughts, which led to two different emotions, which led to two different behaviors.
Would you say that the difference in the behavior and the way it was received was based on people's personality, their DNA, or their life experiences, or, you know, two people to have received that person's, I guess, you know, aura, body language, spirit, we would call it in the Christian world, you know, their spiritual, you know, disposition. Do you think, you know, how, you know, someone may be a positive person overall, so they're thinking, well, surely it isn't anything with me. There must be something with her today, you know, instead of me. But someone, you know, who may be kind of negative or just had a lot of bad experiences and they haven't coped with them well, or, you know, however, then it's something with me. I've done something wrong. Do you think the makeup of the person may determine some of that?
I think it's I think we can all get caught up in it. I think some people do it more, which leads to disorders, right? But I've gotten caught up in cognitive distortions and mind reading and all of those tricks that are mind will tell us. And I think really we should be taught in elementary school about these things and how we think and how our thinking can lead to how we feel and how we feel can lead to our behaviors and help us untangle those distortions. So it's a human problem, but again, some people have some genetic predispositions in terms of like we inherit traits from our family, and we learn traits from our family. If our mom does this, we might do it. We learn that, the way people look at you is probably about you. You know, if you're watching somebody model that behavior, then you're going to pick up on that. And then experience to do that, right? Also do that. So but then there's a lot of branches of cognitive behavioral therapy. So, and a lot of different approaches, like there's dialectical behavioral therapy, there's acceptance and intervention therapy, exposure and response prevention. So all of those and more, and inference-based CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, all fall under this umbrella of cognitive behavioral therapy. And we use different approaches to treat different disorders. So with BDD, with body dysmorphic disorder, we do use a CBT cognitive distortion, trying to look at the way that a person thinks and their beliefs and their thinking and their distorted thinking. I particularly prefer an approach called inference-based CBT, where I look at their reason and the process and how they come to believe these things. But each of those are cognitive approaches. And then the behavioral part of CBT is where you go out and you do the thing that you haven't been doing. So, for instance, if we're talking about phobia, the only way you're going to really get over a phobia is to expose yourself to the phobia, right? Like, I see a ladder over there in the corner. I'm afraid of heights. I'm going to have to climb that ladder and stand there for a little while. Sort of like the first time you rode a bike. I think most people are scared to jump on that bike first.
Oh, absolutely.
But then I do it, then usually with some encouragement from my parents,
Yeah.
right? I do it and then I do it again and that fear goes away. I learn that this is actually okay. It's not dangerous and I can do this, right? And so that's the behavioral aspect. We use even with body dysmorphic disorder. So what it looks like, right? So what a person with body dysmorphic disorder experiences. One, you have to have an hour or more a day of preoccupation with this body flaw. And again, the body flaw is not observable to other people. So it might be, I think, one eye is lower than the other, my cheekbones are not symmetrical. Mostly neck and above, but that's been common. But it could be any
people. That's your first kind of presentation. People see your face, so we look at something that we can see because we're focusing on it, and other people are like, I don't see that in your eye. I don't see the difference there.
Don't see it at all. Which is very frustrating, right? So mostly neck and above, it could be your hair, skin is one of the most common ones. It could be the symmetry in your face. My eyebrows are asymmetrical. My nose is too large. My lips are too thin. My cheeks are sagging. My neck area. But it can also be my arms are too big. My stomach is a big one. My stomach is protruding. It can even be about your feet.
Yeah, my feet are too big. These shoes make my feet look way here, and everybody else is like, no, they don't.
Exactly.
Person, because they have a conflict about their feet.
The feet could be their feet size. It could be their toes. It could be literally anything, right? It could be, but typically neck and above. So what happens is there's preoccupation, right? Which causes the person to focus, to think about it a lot, one, but then they also do some behaviors. And the behaviors are most often, the most common one is staring in the mirror or looking at it. If it's like above it, you're staring in the mirror, but looking at your toes or whatever, but looking in the mirror. And this can occur for hours a day. I mean, I had a client that would get up 4 hours early before having to be somewhere because they knew the requirement was to continue to stare and stare. They weren't even putting on makeup. They were just looking or staring. They would get caught in the mirror, right? And then when they go out, I'm staring. I get in my car and I'm looking in the rearview mirror. And then I get to where I'm going. I look in the rearview mirror. And then I get inside and I go straight to the bathroom to look in the mirror, right? You know, so it is a constant preoccupation.
Just look at itself and making sure self is
checking. That's right. Checking. So lots of checking. And then camouflage, right? So then I'm going to use my hair to cover up any facial feature. I'm going to wear clothes that will cover up, not wear clothes that expose something that I worry about, wear hats, do things with my hair. You know, cosmetic procedures are really common for people with BDD. Most people have had a cosmetic procedure if they're old enough to pay for themselves. I work with a lot of teenagers who want them initially, but and then some people believe they have something that's just not operable, right? It's just not fixable. And you can imagine the hopelessness that I really believe that. I see it. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm carrying this around on my face all day. And these are not small things. When I ask people with body dysmorphic disorder, how do they see themselves? How do they think other people see them? What adjectives would they use to describe? Ugly is the mildest. But we're talking grotesque, abnormal, monstrous. I mean, it's a very distorted view of yourself. And these could be perfectly attractive people. And when I meet someone, I screen every client I have for BDD, screen everyone because I know I'm going to miss it if I don't. And when I find out that they have it, before they tell me what their flaw is, I can tell you what their flaw is. Like, and it might be that they actually have a big nose or bushy eyebrows, but that is not it. But that's not it. That's not what they're worried about. They could have an observable flaw, but that's absolutely not what they're worried about, right? They're worried about something I can't see. So there's no way for me to know what. It's really interesting disorder, and you can see. It really requires a specialist, somebody who's trained, somebody who's studied, somebody who's treated it, because it's easy to miss and it's easy to misunderstand. And most people will think, oh, it's just this body image thing, right? Or, oh, I'm just, because people will say, I just look for monsters or ugly or grotesque. And a therapist will just think this is low self-esteem, right? But that's more than low self-esteem. It's more than low self-esteem. This is something. So let me ask you this, in your experience, have you treated someone
who has body dysmorphia disorder and went to have a cosmetic procedure for the nose. Let's say the nose was too big, and they've had it, and they were still not healed. They were a whole from that. They still felt like something was wrong, or whatever it may have to be. Have you had someone to have treatment and then still felt the issue wasn't resolved?
No, I was treating them. When I was
Okay.
treating someone, I'll ask if they hold off on any type of medical treatment.
Okay.
But, until they treat them. If they're not better, they still feel like they need it, the good treatment for a chance.
Okay.
I have one client who had septoplasty, rhinoplasty, and before I got to work with him, he'd already had that. But what happens and what research shows is 95% of the time, a person with CBD will receive a cosmetic procedure and either be dissatisfied with the result, or if they're satisfied. And so now you can't change it because you've already, you can't change it back, right? Which you can imagine how hard that feels. Or it jumps to another feature. So they might be satisfied with that. And for my client, he had this rhinoplasty and he was fine with it, but it jumped to something else. And that's what he came to see me about. And people with BDD typically have up to 7 different areas that they're worried about. And can have up to 7 different areas, but whatever they're focusing on at the moment, they're not worried about all that. Worried about all. This is what's that. So if you resolve one, sometimes it can jump to another. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So let me ask you this. So someone is standing in the mirror. This person has lost, let's say, 100 pounds. They were 300 pounds, and they're standing in the mirror. And let's say 150. They're down to 150 now, and they're in the mirror, and the person is saying, "I can't see any difference. Everybody else can see the weight loss, but they can't." What is that? What is that they're looking in the mirror? We all can see the 150 pounds weight loss, but they're still saying, "I can't really see it. It's not that much. Maybe 20 pounds I've lost, or I just don't see the weight loss." What happens with that?
Yeah, so I have a client right now that's sort of like that. It's lost in weight. And it shows up more like when I'm in the mirror, I don't think my clothes fit right. My clothes aren't fitting right. And because they've lost 100 pounds, and their clothes didn't fit right when they were 100 pounds heavier. They were much bigger clothes, baggier clothes that covered up the excess weight. And it's a process of doubting and doubting that, and I don't have an exact answer, but I think that images get kind of stained in our memory, right, of the way we see ourselves. And it's similar when a teenager has acne. Really bad acne. Like teenagers get really bad acne. But I worked with a lot of adults who still thought they had acne, like they had when they were teenagers, or were afraid they were having acne. They did when they were teenagers. And so from different approaches, we would take it different ways. We would help them see, from a cognitive behavioral approach, well, you were wearing a size 22, and now you're wearing a size 14, right?
Right. Numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
Numbers are truthful.
And you can see that. When we don't see it, it's a process of helping them understand how they come to believe. They can't see it. And even for a person with acne that still believes they have acne, even though they don't. So it's a slow process in treating BDD and helping them understand where are the distortions, where are the reasons blood, and then do some behavioral experiments if necessary. For instance, one of my clients had with BDD, really kind of resolved the BDD. No longer thought that this law was there. However, they had withdrawn from school and started. And since COVID, it's really easy to do homeschooling. I don't know if you realize that. It's like super easy because all the infrastructures,
already put in place.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Most of my teams have withdrawn from school. They're no longer attending school, and they're taking online college classes when they get to college. So they've withdrawn from society, which really leads into the depression, more depression, and isolation. And never gives them the opportunity to just confirm their belief either. But when this client went anywhere, they had to be in public, which they were avoided most of the time, they would not make eye contact with other people. into this belief that other people would be like, right, something's wrong with you, right? And so one of our experiments was going to the mall and making eye contact with people, which they realized nobody was paying attention to them at all, right? And another idea is like, if I believe, if I have this belief about myself that I'm victorious or there's something fantastic about me, and I hear somebody laughing about me, who is it going to say to them?
Whatever the flaw is, whatever you perceive. So you're walking around, I guess, with the mind, or trying to assume.
Well, it's a confirmation bias, right? And so, like, anything around me confirm what I already believe about myself. And if my eyes are downward, I don't notice it's a bunch of teenage girls over there, pointing at some boy there, flirting with it, whatever. I just hear the laughing.
And just correlated that to you and whatever disorder, insecurities you have about self.
And that belief is so strong. And so that keeps me, for people with BDD, like if you have mild BDD, have worked with mild BDD, school teachers are still living the average life, but the stress was still there. But it wasn't like, I worked with also severe BDD with young girls and guys, because 40% of people with BDD are men, so it's not just a woman thing, right? But so when I work with these young girls, which I love the fact that I get to work with these young girls, because it takes on average 15 years for someone to get an accurate diagnosis for the reasons I listed before. So there's a lot of suffering. But these young teenagers I'm working with, they have dropped out of school. They're taking online classes. They're taking online, so they're not going to high school. They're not going out with their friends. They're not going to parties. Some of them will have a job because they feel that's what they need to be doing. They need to work, but it's to work and back from work. When they get to college, I've had clients fail college classes because they had schooling to take the test. They couldn't take it online, and they wouldn't show up for the test, right? Because you can imagine the entire time you were sitting in a classroom, if you believe that your face is horribly asymmetrical, or that there's something about you that's observable that other people can see, you're sitting in a classroom around 30 other students, all you can think about is how you look and what they're thinking of you. Everybody's looking at me. So my eyes are down. I'm not making contact. I'm in and out. I don't make friends with people. I don't. So that becomes so distressing. If you even try to do it, then you don't want to go back and do it again, right?
Stress. So just showing up, being there, even if the thing didn't really happen, but you're feeling like it happened. So I'm not gonna go there yet.
You can't just confirm it because you're not making any eye contact with people. You think everybody's looking at you. So you're not looking at them because, it's a horrible experience, right? It's a horrible experience. So people's world with BDD, not everybody, because some people have mild BDD and they're perfectly functioning, going to work every day, raising kids, married and all of that. But for the people who have moderate to severe OCD, BDD, their world gets smaller and smaller. And, so much, some of my clients say, I will never have a baby because I wouldn't want to pass these genetics on to a child. Nothing's wrong. But you can imagine also, so we talked about where do people leave it from, right? So BDD typically begins in middle school. So think about all the changes
in going your grade school to middle school,
and your body's changing,
right?
And people are noticing everybody's body changing. This person hit puberty. Look at this, look at that, acne. So everybody's focused on you, appearance, and you're being tribal. Like, which tribe am I going to be in? So your parents, how am I going to show up in the world? Am I going to be in this group of really smart kids, or am I going to be athletic? Elementary school's not all that pressure, right? There's a lot of stress, the puberty and all of that. Somebody makes the offhand comment about suffering. So for instance, one of my clients loves me to talk and share her story. And I didn't find out this for months into treatment. She said, the thing I worry about most is my dimple and my chin. Oh, and I'm telling y'all, I never noticed the dimple. It wasn't even observable to me. But when I looked really hard, I'm like, oh yeah, you do have a dimple. And then I'm thinking, I can barely notice this. It's not like some people have obvious dimples.
Yeah, some people have. Yeah.
So I thought, I wonder how she sees this dimple. So I pulled up, I Googled images of, it's called cleft chins, right?
Right.
And so different types of cleft chins. So pick out which one you see and when you look in the mirror. And the one she picked out was just this hugely exaggerated cleft chin. Most people think dimples are cute.
Yeah, I was just getting ready.
Right?
The perception, a lot of people are like, oh, that is just so nice. I mean, it makes you, you know.
Yes. But not the one she picked out. Most people would think that's too much. That's too, probably get filler in there or something. And I'm like, how did she get that idea? Well, some kids noticed this little dimple in her chin, and there's I think an adult comic, animated show where somebody's called butt paste. And that's what they call kids with so you know, sorry about the word language, but that's what they call. Apparently that's the name because it was a very exaggerated, it was a very exaggerated cleft chin. And like everybody would call her that. They would call him that name. They called her that. These boys said you called her that because they noticed the dimple. Like in the image in her mind. Or this exaggerated dimple, and that's what she started to see. So when somebody loses 100 pounds and still sees themselves as they were, our imagination is a powerful thing, right? And so I've had clients who spend hours in front of the mirror, and when they walk away from the mirror, and they see okay, everything's good, but when they walk away from the mirror, they imagine their worst fears in their head what they look like, and have to go back to make sure that it isn't. Because our imagination, most people with OCD and CBD can actually visualize what they would do. You can visualize it in Technicolor and 3D script, because most people with CBD and OCD really very creative. I mean, that's my experience. I don't know what the research says right now. From my experience, I work with a lot of artists and very creative, very intelligent. And I can imagine these things. And imagination is powerful. When we imagine things, it's like to do with it. And it's a good process of reasoning and imagination. And my belief, the process of reasoning and imagination is the sort of thinking. Person really begins to believe them about themselves.
So it gets in the mind. It can be a comment that someone made. It can be someone being mean to say things, and then we receive it, and then we start walking that narrative that either we have imposed upon ourselves or someone else has said. You know, I think about the scripture Psalm 139 that tells us that we're beautifully and wonderfully made. You know, that we are God's masterpiece, and Genesis tells us that we're made in the image of God, and so when I'm listening to you and I'm processing everything that you're saying, and I'm looking at where is God in our story, and those scriptures came to mind, for acceptance. And I'm not saying that people don't do things to, what they feel like will make them feel better, look better, and to God be the glory for whatever. But it's the obsessiveness and the disorder that comes, into play where it gets our culture there, where people lose their way in who God made them to be, instead of what they think the world or what they think their imagination, what you're saying should be. Tell me about when we look at, in the context of stars, Hollywood people, people who we see come down on our phone lines or the media and the social media platforms, and we see all these movie stars and they've had all this work done. And do you think that sometime in this disorder, people really start looking at these people really look like this perfect image? I notice a lot of AI on social media, Facebook, where you can go and recreate yourself with those avatars or whatever they are. And people do that and they post them out there and say, look at me, my picture. And so, do you think that that's going to somewhere that may be unhealthy if we do that a lot, or we compare ourselves to people?
I think in terms of body dysmorphia, definitely it's unhealthy. And that's one of the things that we have to talk about with all of my clients, because is this real, right? That doesn't cause body dysmorphic disorder. I mean, the body dysmorphic disorder was first noted in the literature in 1890. Right? It's been around a long time. It took 100 years for it to become an actual this is a disorder we need to be looking at. In the 1980s, it finally made it into the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. In the 1990s, people started studying it and creating therapies around it and all of that, and it's kind of grown since then, and it's getting more and more attention and more understanding. But that's not the cause of it, but it is a maintaining factor, right? So one of the compulsions with BDD is comparing yourself to others. If I am out, like I'm looking for how you look, comparing myself to taking pictures. So mirror checking is one. Picture taking is huge. So I'm going to take a picture, and then I'm going to see a picture. Seeing a picture is a huge trigger for most people.
That's what I was wondering.
Because and the picture, and what's really interesting is when during a stressful moment, they're already doubting that they look good. So they see a picture, they go out with their friends, they look online, the social media where it is, and see a picture of themselves, and they zoom in on the very defect, right? Like it's a very precision. They're not looking at this whole big picture, they're zooming in on. And we all take that pictures, right?
Right, yeah.
But for these people, they can tell me. I ask them, have you ever at a calm moment looked back at the picture that you took and realized that you couldn't figure out what it was you were so upset about? Like a week later or a day later, that same picture won't trigger them the same way. So they've already got this idea in their head. They're zooming in on this particular thing. I think that all of the social media is a maintaining factor because it's a compulsion. I'm going to go on social media and compare myself to these AI generated images to these beautiful people. And so it becomes a compulsion, but it doesn't cause it.
Okay, so it's not a causation of it. It's just a kind of reaction to it almost. Okay. All right, that's good to know because I often wonder, because we see so much of that online and the perfect person, and then now we've gone from the perfect person with plastic surgery to the AI, which is the epitome of
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I mean, there are no flaws. Whatever you're looking for is there because it's generated by those artificial.
I think it's going to cause problems in society in a
so
lot of ways.
too.
I'm not so sure about body dysmorphic disorder, but I think
it's gonna cause some problems, and so that's a reality, and that's an imagination, I guess, with artificial intelligence. People imagine themselves with the perfect person, or this image is the perfect person. So that is really interesting how that can happen. So as we get ready to conclude, again, we are talking about body dysmorphic disorder. And so my guest here is Margaret McCall. She is a licensed therapist, and she specializes in body dysmorphia disorder and OCD. And so, again, I'm Ernestine Campbell, the pastor at Epworth C. Invite you to worship anytime or to visit with us here at the church. And so as we get ready to conclude, what are some takeaways people can take with them?
Well, so if you've listened to this podcast and you think, I may have this, but you're probably going to doubt you have this, right? So I want you to ask yourself, is what I am doing what everyone else is doing? Like there are a lot of things that people don't like about themselves. It's normal body dysmorphia, like maybe I don't like the cellulite on my hips, or maybe I don't like that my nose is a little bit wider. But for people who have just like this dislike of a certain body part, are they spending hours and hours a day and do they constantly have to check to see? Does it take you hours to get ready in the morning? And are you very distressed and are you seeking reassurance from other people? And other people are like, no, I don't see what you're talking about. There's a big difference between body dysmorphia and a disorder. And if you are noticing yourself and any of the things like that, you can go to the Body Dysmorphic Disorder Foundation online to look at BDD Foundation. You can go there and get more information. There's probably a list of providers, but educate yourself, seek help. One of the things I didn't talk about is the major depressive disorder. And I think this is important because 78% of people have major depressive disorder, but 38% of people actually attempt suicide. This is a serious disorder. There's a lot of hopelessness and helplessness around it. And so, I just want to encourage people to get help because there is help. Treatment is effective. You can get better. You need to find a specialist. because a lot of therapists just don't understand it or find a therapist and tell them, this is what I have,
Mhm.
and I need this kind of therapy. Will you help me with it? Will you learn it and use it with me?
Mhm.
But yeah, it's something that is, and 3% of the population suffers from it. That's pretty good.
Wow, that is big.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah.
You know, the interconnectedness to other disorders and mental and emotional distress kinds of situations are all tied in some kind of way, it seems like, with a lot of diagnoses, that they're not singular.
So, well, what happens, I'll just explain that most of the time the BDD comes first, right? And then the major depressive disorder. Because of the BDD, right?
That makes
If I'm
sense.
isolated, if I find this stuff about me that I don't like,
Absolutely.
and then the social phobia comes along with it, because I'm offending other people for freezing and phobia. So if I treat the BDD, unless the depression is just really taking over everything, if I treat the BDD, the depression's been gone, the social phobia has been diminished, right? Yeah.
So getting to the root of the problem,
That's right.
the true diagnosis,
That's right,
will help with any symptoms that are attached to that.
yeah. And psychiatric hospitalization for people with BDD are high. They don't get that people treat them for depression. They're not getting to the root of the depression. That's why this it takes 15 years. Right? This is it. And I love treating BDD. I do. I do.
Passionate, wanting to help people and to be able to diagnose what it is and get them on the right track. How can someone find you? Of course, we'll have your information on the podcast. What is a good way if someone is feeling like they need to talk with someone and they're listening to this, you're listening to this, and you're thinking that there are some things here that I've heard that I identified with, and I do want some help, and I, want to reach out, and she's willing to help. She has a passion to help people. It's a calling, we're called to this. So, how can they find you?
Well, I don't have a website. I need to create one. All right. But I am on Psychology Today. So or you can just Google my name, Margaret McCall, LPC, Licensed Professional Counselor. It's going to come up. My name's going to come up on there. Or go to Psychology Today and type my name in. And I have a profile on there so you can connect me. Okay. And I'm happy to leave my number and my email address for you to put on the podcast. Right. Even if you don't want to see me, or if you have a therapist that's working with you, I talk to every person who reaches out to me with a consultation. Just to figure out, for a lot of people who don't know and they're unsure, do I have BDD? So I'll spend time on the phone with people to help them figure it out. Like, does it look like it or sound like it? So I don't mind people reaching out via email and phone and asking questions or giving more information. If you're a therapist in Columbus, there aren't many of us who treat BDD. So if you're watching this and you want to learn more, I would love to connect with you, because we need more providers out there that are able to recognize this and be willing to treat it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. In other words, as the scripture teaches us in Matthew, not ask and seek, and you shall find. This is what she just said to you. So we are a biblical-based podcast. So I will put in some scriptures there, here and there. But most of all, we want to reach out to you in practical and realistic things that people may have going on in their life. You have a wealth of knowledge and experience in your spirit. It talks to the fact that you want to help people be better. So thank you so much again for coming again. Margaret McCall, the licensed therapist, BDD and OCD. And so love to hear from you, want to engage with you. Please send me your questions. Again, you can go on social media as well. You can reach out. The information is there on the Epworth UMC website and Facebook and other social media platforms. And just let me know what you think. And if you want some more information and just want to engage with you, God bless you. And thank you for spending time with us.